Okay, good morning. The spiritual reading this morning is taken from this little book called Tell Me Another Story by Lisa Suhay. Cute little book here. And the story I've chosen for you this morning is Inchworm. In all of the fields and fields of summer flowers, there was no smaller creature than Allie Inchworm. Stretched out on the petal of a new daisy, the slim, bright green creature looked like a snip of thread, or a line drawn by a child with a colored pencil. While most creatures would have thought that being so tiny was a bad thing, Allie knew better. Allie knew because the flowers themselves had told her so. "Dance for us, Allie," they called to her. "Dance your special dance for us." While all the other inchworms in the world spent their days measuring the flowers, Allie had chosen a different pastime. When the wind hummed in the trees and the birds sang along, the little being was filled with so much joy that she could not help but move to the rhythm. Because all the other worms were tone deaf, they could not appreciate the music that Allie could feel and hear. Allie had invented the two-step. Step, together, shimmy and bounce. The flowers loved every second of it. It tickled them to see the little green worm so carefree and joyous, instead of being serious like all the others they had met. "Allie, for goodness sake," cried the Nit, the worm ruler, "you are ruining our work. You are giving inchworms everywhere a bad name with your silly behavior. Go away and let us do something that really matters." Now this hurt Allie's feelings. She didn't think her dance was silly. Hearing the music and doing her dance was a very special thing to her. Allie felt so sad and hurt that she stopped dancing, and with a little sniffle and a sigh, she inched her way down the stem and onto the dirt. There she curled up in a little green coil like a fairy rope and snuggled under a blanket of dirt and fell asleep. Allie woke with a start when she heard dozens of voices shouting and calling for help. She uncoiled and shook off the dirt and looked up to where the voices were coming from. She saw dark shadows racing across the flowers, and the flowers shook. She inched her way back up the daisy stem as fast as she could, and could barely believe the sight that met her eyes. Dozens of larks had descended on the flowers and were quickly snapping up the inchworms in their beaks. "What shall I do?" she cried. "I need help. Someone please help." Seemingly in answer to her prayer, the wind came and began to hum through the trees. Hearing the sound, the meadowlarks, so happy about having a large breakfast laid out at their feet, began to sing. "Dance, Allie," the wind hummed. "Believe in yourself and all will be well." Allie looked in terror at the dozens of birds that could turn and eat her if they spied her. Then she thought about all the other worms in danger. Allie closed her eyes and listened to the music. Allie forgot her fear and began to dance. One by one, the birds turned to watch her. They were spellbound by this tiny, brave creature that would stand before them and faced her greatest fear to save the others. The word spread across the flowers from bird to bird, and soon all the larks stopped feeding. The largest of the larks flew across the meadow and stood in front of Allie. He watched her little dance and felt the gentle sway of the flowers. The wind stopped and the singers ended their song. Allie opened her eyes to see the giant bird in front of her. "Please," she grasped, "don't eat us." The bird bowed to her and said, "Never would I eat one so precious as you, tiny dancer. You have shown that your kind can do more than calculate. You can bring peace and joy." Allie bowed to the bird. "Thank you for sparing us today," she said. The bird turned and said in a very large voice for all the birds to hear, "From this day on, we will not eat the inchworms. For while this one is rare, she may not be the last of her kind." As one, the birds rose from the flowers and flew off. The other worms who had survived the attack all made their way to Allie to thank her. Nick came up and said, "I was wrong. What you do is very important. Perhaps when the day's measuring is done, you could teach us how to hear the music that we have missed." Allie smiled. "You can count on me." And so they did.